welcome to the second IB Economics video. And hopefully this should be a short video and I don't, but that's if I don't start babbling about random stuff or if I don't go off track, which hopefully should not happen, and I won't let it happen. I feel like I'm doing that right now, but okay. So this right here is a circular flow of market economy. Now I took this from the Walker Pearson textbook, which is an amazing textbook for IB economics. I use it and I often refer to that during my videos. So I think you should take a look at it if you want. I mean, of course, there are other awesome IB economics textbook. Anyways, so the circular flow of market economy is the diagram we see here, and it basically represents what happens in a market economy. We talked about market economy. It's the economy when there's no government intervention. It's when producers and consumers are both selfish, but that selfishness helps both of them actually to benefit. And we can see that they're both benefiting from this diagram, which I'll explain later. But first of all, what's important from this diagram is that there's two kinds of market, the product market and the resource market. The product market is what we're more aware of, I guess. It's where you buy the goods and services, where you consume the goods and services. For example, supermarkets, stores, all kinds of things. These are product markets. And there's another market where it's a resource market. This is where things for production is being sold and consumed. It's also very important, but it's something we don't really see or are exposed to in daily lives, especially for IB economics students who are still teenagers. And again, there's these two things here as well in this diagram, which are also very important: households and firms. You can consider them as two stakeholders or two participants in this market economy. And as students, we're more of the household people. But again, if your dad works in a company, that company represents the firms. So let's see what happens in these arrows because this is very important. And these arrows really show the fact that you don't it's not a zero sum game. This market economy is not a zero sum game. You give something, but you will get something in return. And usually for those people, for these participants, they like it. They benefit from it. They benefit, they get more utility, and utility in economics means happiness. So let's look at the product market side first. So the so remember, the product market is where goods and services are being sold. So for the household, let's say you spend expenditure, you see this expenditure, that's when you spend something. So let's say there's a I don't know, a coffee mug that you're like, damn, that's cool. So you expend money, this is the money, right? You give it to the product market. And the product market in return gives you the goods and service. So you get the mug, and damn, you're happy because you personally made this exchange because you think that this mug is worth a lot, worth more than what it was priced, or you thought that was gonna benefit you in certain ways, and that's good. And again, and that money goes to this product market, and realize that firms are the one that's giving the products to the product market. So that's where you can see the output. And when you give the output to the product market, again, these households spend the money through expenditure, and that becomes revenue, and it goes back to the firm. So look here. Firms, they give something that's called output. It's they sell the coffee mug. They produce it and they sell the coffee mug. That's the output. They have to give something. But as we said before, they gain something, or they get back something, and that's revenue. That's in terms of revenue. And this revenue comes from the expenditure that the households made. So that's what happened in the product market. Now, we got the product market, let's focus on the resource market. Resource market is basically where resources are being traded. And resources in this case means things that's needed to produce certain goods and services where we see in the product market. And those are called factors of production, things that's needed to produce. And we see the factors of production as land, labor, and capital. There's also entrepreneurship, which is a little more complicated because it's intangible. These land, labor, and capital are tangible factors of production, and that's why we're just going to consider that for now. And we'll talk about more about entrepreneurship, I guess, later in this IB economics course. So, what happens here in the resource market? So the households give the resource market land, labor, and capital. For example, the best example here I would say is labor because we're more aware of it, or we can better comprehend. Let's say your dad goes to work, right? So in a way, I mean, he is a laborer. He's working, so he's a laborer, and the household, which is I guess your family, gives him to the resource market, which sounds very bad. It's really not. It's really not. It just sounds bad. But I'm just trying to explain this so the diagram makes a bit more sense. So the household is giving your dad or your laborers to the resource market. And why? Because the firms want him to be in his firm so he can produce, he can help with the production of goods and services for the product market. So household gives the land, labor, capital, or the factors of production to the resource market. The firms obtain these factors of production. They obtain these factors of production to paying the cost of production. So we see that as wages, rent, and interest. So the firms pay for the cost of production for these factors of production. It goes to the resource market, and the households get that money, get that cost of production in terms of wages, rent, and interest back. So let's understand what happened. Households, they gave land, labor, and capital, and as we stated before, they of course in the market economy, everyone benefits. So the households benefit because they get back wages, rent, and interest, which they believe is more beneficial, or they gain utility. For firms, they want those factors of production, so they get those factors of production, but they can't get something for free, right? So they have to give back the cost of production, or basically the wages, rent, and interest. They have to pay for the wages of these laborers. They have to pay for the rent of the land. They have to pay for the interest for the capital. And by the way, the capital is like the tools that's needed for production, such as machinery. So these things happen, and that's what in the resource market we can see similar things in the product market because we see the firms and the households both benefit. And now to conclude, let's just combine these two parts we talked about and it will make way more sense. So the households, they give land, labor, and capital to the resource market. And the resource market gives factors of production to the firms, or these land, labor, and capital that the household gave to the firms. And they pay for those through the cost of production, which the households get back as wages, rent, and interest. Now the firms get these factors of production so they can produce output, or they can produce goods and services, boom, to the product market. Now the households want those goods and services. They purchase these goods and services. This goods and services in the product market goes to the households, boom. Now they can't get these goods and services for free, so they spend money. They have to spend. They have to make an expenditure, and this money goes to the product market. And again, the firms made output. So they have to benefit something from it, right? They're not gonna just output and give and make and have cost of production for nothing back, nothing in return. Of course they won't. And they don't, because there's the revenue that's from the expenditure that comes from the product market to the firms. As you can see, this is the circular flow of market economy. It just basically shows that everyone, or the participants, in this case household and firms in a market economy, benefits. And they benefit by giving something, but then getting something back in return, which they find to be more valuable. So that's basically it. I hope this video wasn't too long. Thank you.